At the Iroquois exhibit in the New York State Museum, visitors walk through shadowy rooms to the sounds of birds, bugs, and other wildlife. They see artifacts and scenes of indigenous people, but something doesn't seem right.
You'd go from looking at things like mastodons and saber-toothed tigers to Native Americans. And that transition was not a subtle one. Because, if you're a little kid, you just think, okay, dinosaurs here, mastodons here, Indians, all these things must be extinct.
Despite what the museum may make you think, the Haudenosaunee are very much not extinct. For starters, Iroquois is a French word. Haudenosaunee is the proper term. The State Museum, and other museums for that matter, fall short in their display of indigenous people and culture. A lot of this comes through their use of dioramas. Dioramas at the State Museum show Haudenosaunee people partially naked and working in fields. Native American and Indigenous Studies professor Sasha Scott says that dioramas make those portrayed in them look unnaturally primitive.
Yeah, dioramas are really a touchy subject, but when they have this very static stereotypes, Native people are in the past, and it exoticized them, it's really, I'm glad it made you uncomfortable. It's not great. It's not good at all. And it's part of the colonial legacy of museums.
And the problem isn't all museums, not just the New York State Museum. Museums show so much of what Indigenous people used to be and next to nothing about where they are today. But those living in central New York don't have to look far to see how Indigenous history should be portrayed. Right along the banks of Onondaga Lake sits the Scano Great Law of Peace Center, a cultural center that is modeled differently than a museum.
It gives everybody an idea of a cultural center without artifacts. We're not a museum. We are giving everyone the background on the Haudenosaunee people.
Tina Thomas is Onondaga and has been working at the Cultural Center as an educator for a few years now.
The flow that they have going through here, I have to say, is a great way of doing it. And starting out with the loss of our language and trying to hold on to it and coming through with our tradition, cultures, then working your way upstairs and going into a little more depth of the Great Law of Peace and then the time of contact. It gives you an idea of how much we had here before Europeans came here and how we were at peace until the time of contact again.
A cultural center talks about the traditions and beliefs of a group of people instead of showing artifacts and dioramas like a museum would. Any objects in the Scano Center were made by someone who was Onondaga and for the purpose of the cultural center, not something that was taken centuries ago. These centers are curated by the source community. This means that the Onondaga Nation was responsible for organizing the center how they wanted. This reduces forms of misinformation that can come from poor communication between different cultures.
I think that's a bigger deal when kids or adults come through here, is learning the solid truth and not stories that they've been told in classrooms.
The State Museum declined an interview, but did say that they've been talking to the Haudenosaunee about their exhibits and may change them in the future. While any changes to Indigenous exhibits in museums nowadays are probably steps in the right direction, the only way to truly cut out all Native misinformation in museums is for the nation to make the exhibit themselves.
Native American museums should be run by Native Americans.